Hello everyone. Today I am going to discuss the 33rd question of database management system. Let's see the question. Here's the question set 33. So here's the scenario, but the scenario is same as in the question set 31. I will explain the scenarios simply. There's a shoe store called Arali Shoe Center, and the owner used to keep information in bill book system, but there had some disadvantages. Because of that, the owner has decided to move to a computer software instead of bill book system. So that's the scenario, and in my previous videos I have already created the database Arali Shoe Center using ER diagram, and I have already created the table. So in this video I'm going to explain how to make the relationship between tables. So in the first part of this question set, we have to record the relationship between user and user type in the ER diagram. So let's see how I make this relationship. So here's the database and tables I have created in my previous video. In the first question of this question set, I have to make the relationship between user table and the user type table. So you can see in the question we have to make the relationship between user and user type. So here are those two tables. So when we get a user only have one user type. A user have a user type. When we get a user type, as example, when we get the user type customer, when we get the customer type, there are so many users who are customers. As example, when we get the seller, there are so many sellers. So the relationship between this user type and user table is one-to-many relationship. So here's the relation we use to make the relationship. Here's the one-to-many relationship symbol. So here's the many side and here's the one side. So you can see this is the relationship between user type and user table. So in the second question, we have to make the relationship between user and the gender table. So let's see. So here's the gender table and here's the user table. When we get one user has only a one gender. It is female or male, only a one gender. When we get a gender, as example, when we get the gender title male, there will be more males in the store. There will be more users who are male. So the relationship between those two tables is also one-to-many relationship. So here's the many side and here's the one side. So here's the relation for the second question. In the third question, we have to make the relationship between user and the system login. So let's see. So in this question, here's the user table and here's the system login table. When we get the user table and the system login table, only some particular users have accounts in the software. Only some particular users, like employees, like owners, only have the system accounts in the software. So not every user have the account in the software like that. Customers, they don't have an account in the software, and suppliers, they don't have account in the software, so they don't have system login. But some users like employees, they have a system login. So we allow only few type of users to use the system login. So the relationship between those two is one-to-one relationship, because only one user have only one account. One account can be used by only one user. So the relationship between those two tables is one-to-one relationship. But this is the symbol we use to represent the one-to-one relationship. So I'm going to select it. Now I have to decide what I select first to draw this relationship. When we get the system login, only particular users can has been allowed to use the system login. So first we have to select this, because we can't select this first because not every user can't use the system login. Some particular users, some selected users only can use this system login. So first we have to select system login. Then we can foreign the user ID into the system login table. So here's the relationship for the system login and the user table. Now I'm going to discuss the fourth question. In the fourth question, record the relationship between user and address table. So here's the user table and here's the address table. When we get a user have a one address. When we get a one address, there will be one or more users from the same address, from the same home. So the relationship between those two is one-to-many relationship. So here's the one-to-many relation and here's the many side, here's the one side. So address ID has been foreign in the user table. In the next question, what's the relationship between address and the city? So now we're going to make the relationship between city table and the address table. When we get a one city, there will be so many addresses, so many homes, so many places in a one city. When we get a one address, there are only a one city in a address. So relationship is one to many. So here's the many side and here's the one side. So here's the relationships in the user side. Now I'm going to discuss the other questions. In the sixth question, we have to record the relationship between product and brand in the ER diagram. So let's see. So here's the product table and here's the brand table. So the relationship between, so we have to find the relationship between those two tables. When we get a one brand, like DSI, as example, I'm going to get the DSI brand. When we get the DSI brand, there are so many products. There are so many products made by the DSI brand. So the relationship between brand and product table is one-to-many relationship. When we get the product, some particular product, it has only a one brand that is producing it. So the relationship between those two tables is one-to-many relationship. So here's the symbol and here's the many side and here's the one side. So you can see brand ID has been foreign key in the product table. Now I'm going to discuss the next question. So in the seventh question, record the relationship between user and GRN table. So let's see. So here's the GRN table and here's the user table. So in this question, we have to make the relationship between user and GRN. So when we get a user like seller, a seller will have so many good received note because he supply a particular product to so many shops, so he will own so many good received note. When we get a one good received note, will have only to a one user, only to a one seller. So the relationship between those two is one-to-many relationship. So here's the symbol and here's the many side and here's the one side. So this is the relationship between user and the GRN table. In the next question, we have to find the relationship between GRN and GRN item. So here's the GRN table and here's the GRN item table. So in this question, we have to get the relationship between those two tables. So when we get a one good received note, there will be so many products. There will be one or more products in a one note. But when we get a one item, when we get a one GRN item, there will be a one good received note for the particular item. So the relationship between those two is one-to-many relationship. So this is the symbol and here's the many side and here's the one side. So this is the relationship between GRN and GRN item table. So in the next question, in the ninth question, note the relationship between GRN item and product table. So let's see. So in the question, we have to get the relationship between GRN item and GRN item and the product table. So here's the GRN item table, here's the product table. So when we get the relationship between those two tables, when we get a product, when we get a one product, there will be so many GRN items. But when we get a one GRN item, it only have a one particular product. So the relationship between those two is one-to-many relationship. Here's the many side and here's the one side. So here's the GRN table, GRN item and product table relationship. In the 10th question, we have to record the relationship between GRN item and stock table. So let's see. So here's the GRN item table and here's the stock table. When we get a one GRN item has only a one stock. When we get a one stock, in a one stock there will be so many GRN items. So the relationship between those two tables is one-to-many relationship. So this is the symbol we use to represent the one-to-many relation, and here's the many side and here's the one side. So here's the relationship between GRN item and stock table. In the next question, we have to record the relationship between user and the invoice table. So here's the invoice table and here's the user table. In the question, we want to find the relationship between user and the invoice table. So here's the invoice and here's the user table. When we get a one user may have one or more invoice. When we get a one invoice owns only a one user. So the relationship between those two tables is one-to-many relationship. So here's the many side and here's the one side. So this is the relationship between invoice and user table. In the next question, we have to make the relationship between invoice and invoice item table. So here's the invoice table and here's the invoice item table. So we have to make the relationship between those two tables. When we compare invoice table and the invoice item table, when we get a one invoice, there will be one or more invoice items. In a one invoice, there are many invoice items. Like that, when we get a one invoice item, or for one invoice item, there is a one invoice. So the relationship between those two tables is one-to-many relationship. So here's the many side. Invoice item is the many side. Invoice is the one. So here's the relationship between those two tables. Now I'm going to discuss the next question. In the 13th question, we have to make the relationship between invoice item and the stock table. So here's the invoice item table and here's the stock table. When we get a one invoice item has a one stock. When we get a one stock, there will be so many invoice items. So the relationship between those two tables is one-to-many relationship. So here's the relationship we use to make the one-to-many relation. So here's the many side and here's the one side. So here's the relationship between those two tables. It is a one-to-many relationship. So today I have discussed the 33rd question set. So thank you everyone for listening.